And that honor can't be delegated to another office, can't be outsourced or buried inside a new bureaucracy. It's got to be lived out in real action. So, Madam Speaker, here's the heart of the issue. The problem's not that there's too little oversight. The problem is that there's too little action. We don't have a shortage on reports. We have a shortage on results. Now, the Auditor General, time and time again, has already told Parliament exactly where the system is breaking down. Late funding, inconsistent interpretation of agreements, poor coordination across departments, unclear accountability, and almost no consequences when obligations are ignored. There have been multiple audits over the years by the Auditor General into treaty-related obligations, and still, delays, still, missed commitments, still, Indigenous governments forced back to the table to fight for what was already agreed to. So now, the government proposes a new commissioner, someone who will monitor, assess, and report. But, Madam Speaker, reports aren't roofs. They don't build homes, or bring clean water, or deliver policing. And reports don't create economic opportunity. This new office has no power to compel compliance or enforce obligations. It's got no direct accountability to Parliament. It can't direct departments. It can't impose consequences. And it can't resolve disputes. It's just more smoke and mirrors, because oversight without enforcement is a system built to observe failure, not to fix it. So, Madam Speaker, Indigenous leaders themselves have shown us what real partnership looks like. Chief Clarence Louie of the Osoyoos Indian Band captured it well when he said, "We are business people. Our goals are to build a strong future and to pursue the good life." That is the spirit we should be supporting. Indigenous communities building their own future through hard work, collaboration, and opportunity. A government that keeps its word and delivers on modern treaties doesn't create dependency, it creates the space for that success to flourish. Good things happen when everyone does their part, when Indigenous governments lead, when local businesses invest, and when Ottawa actually follows through on the commitment it has already signed. We know these agreements can be negotiated and implemented when government is focused, disciplined, and accountable. Modern treaties and self-government agreements are possible. They're not easy files. They require that discipline, focus, trust, and constant conversation with Indigenous partners. But they can be delivered. Let me remind the House of what success looks like. Tsawwassen Final Agreement, located just an hour from my riding, happened under Prime Minister Harper. Madam Speaker, the Tsawwassen's Final Agreement is one of the most significant modern treaties in our country's recent history. Not because it made headlines, but because it made progress. It came into effect in 2009, giving the Tsawwassen First Nation clear authority over their land, their resources, and their economic future. It replaced uncertainty with clarity and decades of stalled negotiations with a real enforceable partnership. But what stands out about Tsawwassen is not just the treaty itself, but what the community built with it. They used their rights the way any government should, with discipline, with vision, and a plan for the next generation. You can see it in the development around the Tsawwassen Mills and Tsawwassen Commons. You can see it in the jobs created, the businesses launched, and the sense of momentum that didn't depend on speeches and symbolism, but on hard work and steady leadership. And here's the real lesson, Mr. Speaker. When a treaty is clear, when the federal government does its part, when the rules are respected by everyone at the table, Indigenous communities don't just participate in the economy, they help drive it. The Tsawwassen Treaty didn't succeed because Ottawa created a new office. It succeeded because the agreement was honored and because the Tsawwassen people turned opportunity into outcomes. We love to take the grandkids out to the Tsawwassen Mills Mall, to wander around Cabela's, checking out the displays. And when they first opened, we threw a few gutter balls in the bowling alley at Uncle Buck's Fish Bowl and Grill, and the kids loved it. Madam Speaker, it's a living example that when we keep our word, when we show up, follow through, and respect the commitments we've already made, good things happen. stronger communities, stronger partnership, and a stronger Canada. More agreements like this won't come from a new office, a new commissioner, or a new layer of bureaucracy. It comes from a government that respects the negotiating table, honors deadlines, and holds themselves accountable for results. It comes from ministers who show up, officials who execute their mandate, and Indigenous partners who share the future of their communities. Madam Speaker, Conservatives believe in accountability. We believe in honoring the Crown. We believe in a strong nation-to-nation relationship grounded in trust. So yes, oversight matters, but real oversight comes from Parliament, from the Auditor General, from the treaty governance bodies, and from the courts, not from yet another monitoring office. Mr. Speaker, Conservatives believe that there's a better path forward, one rooted in accountability, partnership, and respect. We would strengthen responsibility inside the ministries that already exist, setting clear expectations, enforcing performance milestones, and requiring regular reporting to Parliament with real consequences when obligations are missed. We'd use the tools already written into modern treaties, the dispute resolution clauses, the courts, and the work of the Auditor General. Instead of creating more layers of bureaucracy, we would put responsibility back on ministers and departments where it belongs. If a commitment is delayed, Canadians deserve answers from the people who signed the agreement, not from another office with no power to enforce it. And we would honor the sovereignty and self-determination of Indigenous partners by making accountability something we build together, not something imposed by Ottawa. Above all, Conservatives are focused on results because homes, infrastructure, and opportunity are delivered by governments that do their jobs, not by more commissioners and more reports. Indigenous governments have been clear. They want accountability, yes, but more than that, they want progress. They want the federal government to deliver what it already agreed to. They want implementation that is timely, consistent, and respectful. Bill C-10 gives us new reports, but not new results. Canadians, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, expect more than that. Mr. Speaker, reconciliation is not a new title or a new commissioner or a new office on Wellington Street. Reconciliation is when a treaty is honored, when communities see real change, and when federal government does what it already promised to do. So let's choose the path of integrity and a future where treaties are not words on paper, but living commitments, upheld with discipline and delivered with honor, measured in real progress on the ground. We don't need more bureaucracy. We need a government that does its job.
Questions and comments? The Honourable Parliament Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. We have Bill C-10 before us because of the strong leadership from Indigenous people and the grassroots from Indigenous community members, along with a cooperative government seeking through reconciliation to bring forward positive legislation. That's the driving force before what we're actually voting on, and the Conservatives continue to want to filibuster to prevent this legislation from passing. My question is why? And while she's addressing that particular question, maybe she can address the issue of how it is that you can reconcile the Conservative Party, in particular the leader of the Conservative Party's approach in dealing with the pipeline going through BC, feeling that there's absolutely zero obligation to Indigenous people or the province of BC.
The Honourable Member for Cloverdale, Langley City.
Madam Speaker, let's be honest. This question distracts us from the core problem. This government's answer to every failure is to stack another layer of paperwork on top of the last one. Bill C-10 is just another monitoring office that can't enforce a thing. More paper, same problems. The budget is full of new departments that won't solve a thing. It's time to get serious and ensure that departments which already exist actually follow through on their responsibilities.
Questions and comments? The Honourable Member for Parkland.
Madam Speaker, and once again we listened to the Liberal Parliamentary Secretary talk about how Conservatives aren't honouring reconciliation and our treaties. Meanwhile, this Liberal government is attacking Indigenous children with autism, fetal alcohol syndrome, and other vulnerabilities. They've cut funding for Indigenous education that was mandated by the Supreme Court of Canada and the treaties. I wonder if my honourable colleague can talk about the hypocrisy from these Liberals on Indigenous funding. Thank you.
Very brief answer from the Honourable Member for Cloverdale Langley City.
Madam Speaker, we Conservatives oppose the approach that the government is taking. A new bureaucracy doesn't hold anyone to account. It shields ministers from responsibility. Instead of fixing delays, the government creates another office to talk about the delays. That's not progress, and it adds a whole lot more cost.
Statements by members. Déclaration de député. The Honourable Member for Ottawa Centre. The Honourable Member for Ottawa Centre.
Thank you very much, Speaker. It was my absolute honor to participate in the Tree of Hope ceremony organized by the Ottawa Aboriginal Coalition. This is an important event to raise awareness about the ongoing crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people. It was a procession beginning at the Ottawa Police Station, leading to Ottawa City Hall, and finishing right here at Parliament Hill. Along the way, lighting red lights in trees as a reminder of the lives lost and as a call to action to support and protect Indigenous women, girls, the 2S LGBTQI+ community members. Speaker, thank you to the elders and the Ottawa Aboriginal Coalition for hosting this important event and for their continued leadership to advocate on behalf of the urban Indigenous community in our city. Miigwech.
The Honourable Member for Vernon, Lake Country, Monashee.
Madam Speaker, nestled deep in the mountains of my riding lies the historic town of Sandon, British Columbia. Once a thriving silver mining hub and the first community in our province where every citizen had access to electricity. At its heart stands the Silversmith Power and Light Plant, commissioned in 1897 and still humming along today, using equipment made when horses were still our primary mode of transportation. Now in its 128th year of continuous operation, it remains Canada's oldest hydroelectric facility, producing clean, renewable energy that can power almost 500 homes. For decades, Hal Wright and his family have dedicated their lives to preserving this extraordinary piece of Canadian history. Through their stewardship, Sandon remains not just a ghost town, but a living symbol of resilience, motivation, and heritage. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Winnipeg North.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. In the last election, the Prime Minister talked a great deal about expanding trade opportunities. And to that extent, Madam Speaker, we have seen a Prime Minister and a government traveling the world to ensure that we are able to expand our export markets, Madam Speaker. This is so critically important for all of Canada. For me personally, I'm looking at some of the things that have been coming out of that, such as a commitment in terms of working with the Philippines to try to get a trade agreement in 2026, to working with India to try to get a trade agreement in 2026. Madam Speaker, this is interesting times that we are in, and there's so many things, so many opportunities through trade. Canada is a trading nation. We have 2% or less 0.5% of the world population, yet, Madam Speaker, we contribute to 2.5% of world trade. This is a Prime Minister that understands the importance of trade, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Honourable Member for Abbotsford, South Langley.
Christmas cheer is all around us, especially in our community of Abbotsford, South Langley. I hope families will come out and enjoy the Aldergrove Christmas Parade. I will be thrilled to see you there as I hand out candy canes. Throughout this month, our office will be collecting non-perishable food items for our local food bank. Times are hard, and if you're able to give back in any capacity, it truly helps. I want to take this moment to thank our volunteers, our first responders, parade organizers, local charities, and organizations who make this season so special for us all. To my friends back home in Abbotsford, South Langley, I wish you the merriest Christmas and the happiest New Year as Christians celebrate this holy season of the birth of Jesus Christ. Thank you so much.
The Honourable Member for Mississauga Centre.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Merci, Madame la Présidente. Since 1978, every year on the 29th of November, we commemorate the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people. But the solidarity did not begin in 1978. For over 75 years, millions of Canadians and hundreds of millions around the world have stood in recognition of a reality defined by displacement, loss, and enduring hardship. It is also a day that reminds us of the extraordinary resilience of a people who've endured far more than any ever should. La persévérance du
The
peuple palestinien
perseverance of the
face à des
Palestinian
décennies
people
d'épreuves
over
rappelle au monde
decades of
entier la
hardship
force de
is a
l'espoir
reminder to the
et de la
entire
dignité
world of the
humaine.
strength of hope and human
Canada's
dignity.
proud role on the international stage carries a collective responsibility we owe to all who face injustice, one that demands not only our sympathy but our humanity in action. I rise proudly on behalf of many in my community and across this country to send a message to the people of Palestine. You have not been forgotten and you are not alone. We stand with you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Merci, Madame la Présidente.
The honourable member for Northumberland Clark.
Members of Parliament, above all else, are servants of the Canadian people. Whether we are working in the chamber or in the committee rooms, we must carry that hallowed responsibility wherever we go. Constituents are counting on us to carry out the work they sent us here to do. Right now, members of the Transport Committee are being denied that opportunity to work and serve. Liberal MPs are obstructing our work because they don't want to hear the testimony of victims in our study of unsafe truck driving practices. Voting against our motion to hear from victims is the Liberals' democratic right. However, cancelling meetings to avoid a vote? It isn't just wrong, it's undemocratic. Enough is enough. Liberal members of the Transport Committee need to fulfill their democratic responsibility, let victims be heard, and let parliamentarians get back to work.
The honourable member for Ottawa West Nepean.
Madam Speaker, aging is difficult for most people, but for those who have experienced addictions and mental health challenges, including hospitalizations and periods of homelessness throughout their lives, it is even more challenging. Recently, I toured the soon-to-be-opened Ottawa Salis 54-unit affordable housing complex in my riding of Ottawa West Nepean. This federally funded project will provide low-barrier supportive housing to older adults with complex social and health issues. This unique purpose-built apartment and townhouse project near the City View Curling Club has a variety of bright social and recreation spaces, clinics, and other services. It is very impressive, and it will allow residents to age in place in dignity and safety. This is just one tangible example in my riding that our housing strategy is working and will change lives for the better. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Families across my riding on Vancouver Island are struggling to house and feed themselves as the cost of living continues to rise. The Duncan Food Bank and Kitchen and the Goldstream Food Bank in Langford are beyond capacity and struggling to keep up with demand. This is heartbreaking. And we have a new Veterans Food Bank in Langford scheduled to open mid-December, yet it is already being overwhelmed with requests for assistance from veterans and even serving members of the military. This is heartbreaking. I've risen in this House multiple times to fight for vital industries like fisheries and forestry that are in dire situations, facing shutdowns that will kill jobs and force even more people to food banks. These are all signs of a failing economy driven by this government's handouts and subsidies fueled by endless borrowed and printed money that only serves to drive up further the cost of food. We must act now to help Canadians who are struggling. We must scrap the industrial carbon tax that drives up the cost of fertilizer and farm equipment and ultimately the cost of food. We do not need deficit-funded handouts. Canadians deserve more.
L'honorable député de Côte-Nord,
Kawachi-Kamak-Nitassinan. Madam Speaker, the Bloc Québécois listens to workers, including seasonal industry workers, who do not feel understood or represented in the most recent Liberal budget. There's nothing for employment insurance, even though workers' rights groups, unions, and the Bloc Québécois have been demanding a wholesale reform. There is no renewal of the temporary raised regional unemployment threshold, even though this would provide a much-needed respite to workers. With the holidays approaching, the Liberal government is coming forward with empty hands at a time when seasonal industry workers will be facing empty wallets. While Liberals are ignoring workers, the black hole that is employment insurance will not spare them. To these workers, an essential part of our regional economy and the vitality of our forestry, tourism, and fishing industries, and more besides, the Bloc Québécois will table another bill proposing a reform of the EI system.
Madam Speaker, Whitby is not just talking about sustainability, we're actually demonstrating action. At last week's Durham Greener Building Awards, which recognizes success in achieving climate targets, with 2 awards, our community walked out with some serious hardware. First up, Whitby's Centennial Building earned the Best Emission and Energy Performance Award for the Performing Arts. It proves we can honor our heritage while still hitting new heights in energy performance. Second, the Whitby Sports Complex also stepped up. It received the Leadership and Sustainability Impact Award, showing how a local recreational hub can and will lead the charge on environmental responsibility. Our government backed that vision with a $25 million investment through the Green and Inclusive Community Buildings Fund. That is paying off. Together, these wins say something very meaningful. Whitby is building a future that actually lives up to the hype. Smart, sustainable, and vibrant for generations to come.
The honourable member for Dufferin-Caledon.
Earlier this week, I said it's always a good day for Brookfield. Well, yesterday was another great day for Brookfield as the province of Alberta is pushed into a $16.5 billion deal on carbon capture. And one of the companies looking forward to for infall is going to be, of course, Brookfield. And let's not forget, last week this Prime Minister gave a $500 million contract to the European Space Agency, who is housed on property 50% owned by Brookfield. And also, let's also not forget that 3 days after this Prime Minister had a meeting with President Trump, the President personally signed an agreement for $80 billion with Brookfield for nuclear energy. And just this week, the CEO of Brookfield testified at committee saying, when Brookfield does well, the Prime Minister does well because of how many shares he has in Brookfield. So the question that Canadians want an answer to is, with 2.2 million Canadians going to a food bank every single month, why is the focus of this Prime Minister to enrich Brookfield and himself?
The honourable member for Hamilton Mountain.
As a kid at Christmas, all I wanted to unwrap was the latest Little House on the Prairie or Nancy Drew book. And as I hit my teens, it was all Margaret Atwood. Her books informed my feminism, inspired my sense of humor, instilled in me a lifelong love of dystopian fantasy fiction. Earlier this week, at the start of 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence, I saw her on stage in Hamilton in front of 1,500 rabid fans, and I was reminded just how powerful a woman's voice can be. This event was for Interval House of Hamilton, which supports women fleeing violence and trains men and boys to avoid hyper-masculine misogyny. I've read them all, but my favorite Margaret Atwood is the Mad Adam trilogy, where we read, "We must be a beacon of hope, because if you tell people there's nothing they can do, they will do worse than nothing." Beacons of hope like Margaret Atwood and the Interval House remind us we can all do something about gender-based violence.
Wow.
The honourable member for London Fanshawe.
Madam Speaker, Canadians pay their taxes and expect fairness, but surprise, surprise, the Prime Minister budget did nothing to inconvenience powerful corporations like Brookfield from enjoying Canada's two-tier tax system. Canadians cannot ignore that not long before taking office, the Prime Minister served as chair for Brookfield, a senior position of a company now known for pushing tax avoidance to the max. During an ethics committee meeting, we heard that Brookfield is the most aggressive tax avoider in the country, shifting profits into offshore havens and dodging $6.5 billion in Canadian taxes. And while this government protects these loopholes, it saddles Canadians with the biggest budget in our history. Workers pay for it twice. Once through higher taxes, and again through the hidden inflation tax that follows the massive deficits and drives up the cost of everything. Families in London deserve that better than a system rigged for insiders. Conservatives will fight for fairness.
The honourable member for Barossa. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today, I am extremely proud to mark the exceptional achievement of a youth robotics team from our riding of Barossa. They received the gold medal in the first global challenge, becoming robotics champions of the world, to Araf Alvin Chaudhuri, Ashley Carolina Vasquez Cabrera, Donovan Manlius, Iyad Zabi, Justine Dubuc, Ken Lee Sui, Manuela Christie Nzali Wakem, Raul Andre Vargas Ramirez, Sarah Kaidi, and Taha Buhu. These youth brought home the gold in the
NBA, après
First Global
Vegas
Panama
d'Or,
Robotics
après Mathurin,
Championship.
après Boucher, on a des jeunes qui tracent vraiment l'avenir de Bourassa,
These
l'avenir
youth
du
are
Québec
writing
et
the
l'avenir
story of the
du
future of
Canada
Bourassa,
dans
Quebec,
la robotique.
and Canada.
Bravo, ils sont avec nous à
The
Ottawa.
future of robotics. Thank you, and they're here in Ottawa right now.
The honourable member for Richmond Hill South.
This Liberal Prime Minister called himself the master negotiator, bragging that he alone could land a deal with President Trump on July 21st. He puffed out his chest, promised elbows up, and told Canadians he was ready to fight. But now that he has failed, he shrugs, saying, who cares? And that he doesn't have a burning issue to discuss with the president. In months, he went from lacing up his gloves to throwing up his hands. He hasn't negotiated. He has surrendered. And while he wanders the world of photo ops, our workers are getting knocked to the mat. Well, Conservatives care, and so do the 40,000 manufacturing workers in Ontario whose jobs have vanished since April. Not because of global forces, but because this Prime Minister fumbled the negotiations and left Canada without a deal, without a plan, and without a lifeline. Those workers don't have the luxury of saying who cares, because their mortgages care, their grocery bills care, and their futures care. So will the Prime Minister look those 40,000 workers in their eyes and tell them he actually cares about their jobs, their paychecks, and their livelihoods? Or will he just keep throwing up his hands, walking away from the table, and saying, who cares?
The honourable member for Cape Breton, Canso and Tigonish.
Madam Speaker, it's not for me to rock the boat, but what's the deal with last week's vote? We won the thing, so I won't gloat, but Robert Fife, I'd like to quote. He spoke about some sneaky deeds where two were hiding in the weeds, which served the Tories' voting needs. Embarrassing, the headline reads. Their outline makes it all but certain the two were hiding behind the curtain. With a snap election, they were flirting, credibility shot, their polling hurting. They tried to blame it on the app, but fact and fiction showed a gap. The answers shared are all over the map. It sounds to me like a pile of inconsistencies. So what is it? I'll try to say, next time try to make your way into the House and make our day by voting for the BIA.
Oral questions, questions orales. L'honorable député de Mégantic, l'érable.
De plus en plus de Canadiens se demandent comment ils vont faire pour payer leurs factures. Mais pas le premier ministre, lui, dont la fortune personnelle grossit un peu plus tous les jours, alors qu'il prend des décisions qui enrichissent sa compagnie Brookfield. Un exemple, on voit le président américain revient les mains vides pour les Canadiens, mais les poches pleines pour sa compagnie, qui a conclu une entente de 80 milliards de dollars dans le domaine nucléaire. On dit de lui, Madame la Présidente, qui gère son cabinet comme une entreprise privée. Ben justement, pourquoi les profits vont dans ses poches à lui, pendant que les Canadiens ramassent toujours la facture?
Madame la Présidente, ce que les Canadiens font ce matin, c'est qu'ils se réjouissent des résultats de notre économie super puissante qui s'en vient la meilleure dans le G7. Le dernier trimestre, 2,6% de croissance économique. Ça, Madame la Présidente, c'est quoi? Ce sont des opportunités pour nos jeunes. C'est le reflet de nos dépenses militaires. C'est le reflet de nos efforts en développement économique. C'est le résultat et le fruit de notre travail avec les provinces à édifier et à atteindre les ambitions économiques de tout le Canada, Madame la Présidente.
Avant de devenir premier ministre, le président Brookfield a déménagé ses bureaux du Canada à New York. Avant de devenir premier ministre, le président Brookfield a créé 3 fonds d'investissement, dont un qui est situé au 2e étage d'un atelier de réparation de vélos pour éviter de payer des impôts au Canada. On appelle ça de l'évitement fiscal. Maintenant qu'il est premier ministre, l'ex-président de Brookfield engrange des profits en prenant des décisions gouvernementales qui favorisent sa propre compagnie. Pourquoi le premier ministre continue d'agir comme le président de Brookfield en mettant ses intérêts et ses amis devant ceux des Canadiens qui, eux, payent tout pour lui?
Madame la Présidente, je sympathise avec l'opposition officielle. Ils ne savent pas sur quel pied danser. À tous les jours, on est assujetti à un harcèlement presque de l'autre bord qui nous revendique une croissance économique, qui nous revendique des résultats. Madame la Présidente, ce matin, c'est la preuve. 2,6% de croissance, ça c'est des jobs, ça c'est du développement économique pour nos régions. Madame la Présidente, les résultats sont là. On est à bâtir le Canada et on va continuer de le faire.
Minister's trust may be blind, but the math is not. This week, we found out from Brookfield's Chief Operating Officer that the Prime Minister stands to make millions in carried interest payments from his company's success related to climate and infrastructure schemes that he set up. Many, if not all, of the public financial instruments, funds, and policies the Prime Minister started pushing when he was pulling Trudeau's strings as his economic advisor in 2020 aligned with Brookfield's strategy and success. How is it ethical when the Prime Minister is using the power of his office to benefit him and his company?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday I met with the operating engineers all across the country who came to talk to me about the investments we're making in building Canada strong. And Madam Speaker, they're so excited about the work for their members. And as the proud mother of an operating engineer, I couldn't be more thrilled as well. These are great jobs for young people, for tradespeople all across the country. This is how you build a country strong, Madam Speaker. You invest in the workers of today and tomorrow.
The Honourable Member for Barrie South Minister.
Brookfield COO also confirmed that the umbilical cord between the Prime Minister and his company will stay attached until 2034 because the fund the Prime Minister set up will mature then. That means if it does well, he does really well. But here's the problem. He knows full well what's in his blind trust and is using the power of his office to promote policies that benefit his company and him. AI, modular housing, carbon capture, nuclear, and the transition model of public risk for private return he set up while advising Trudeau will make him millions. How is this ethical, if not illegal?
The Honourable Minister.
Canada's GDP growth last quarter was 2.6%, blowing out the economist's projections, Mr. Speaker. That's what growing Canada strong looks like. It's an investment in the potential of the country, but it's an investment in right now. We have the highest rate of women ever in the workforce, Mr. Speaker. You know why? Because we have an affordable child care agreement. And yesterday, Saskatchewan signed an extension, 5 years, $1.5 billion, to make sure we can not only get women in the workforce, but keep them there. And one more thing, Madam Speaker, $10 a day has been achieved in Saskatchewan. That's real action. That's partnership with provinces.
The Honourable Member for St. Albert, Sturgeon River.
Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister has vast conflicts of interest with Brookfield. That's why the Ethics Commissioner specifically told him not to meet with Brookfield. Despite this, the Prime Minister secretly met with the Chief Operating Officer of Brookfield in October. So a simple question, why did the Prime Minister violate the clear direction of the Ethics Commissioner?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Madam Speaker, the member's resort to personal attacks and dealing in conspiracy theories speaks to a larger issue. A member from the province of Alberta today unable to celebrate the agreement that we have achieved that his own premier is celebrating in public about the opportunity to protect the environment and create good jobs. If he won't stand up for Alberta, I, as somebody from the East Coast who spent 5 years there, absolutely will. The GDP numbers that we've seen come in the past quarter, seeing it go up 2.6%, means good jobs for people and food on the tables for families. We're here to create jobs. It's a shame the Conservatives are opposed.
The Honourable Member for St. Albert, Sturgeon River.
Conspiracy theory, the Ethics Commissioner told the Prime Minister not to meet with Brookfield, and then he did so. Now, this is a Prime Minister that was the chair of Brookfield and who stands to make tens of millions of dollars from in future bonus pay and from stock options. And not only did the Prime Minister clearly violate the direction of the Ethics Commissioner, he attempted to cover it up by not disclosing the meeting. Is this the Prime Minister's idea of ethics?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Madam Speaker, I think my colleague has left his tinfoil hat in the men's room before he attended question period here today. He's here talking about things that do not matter to the people at home as much as things like doctors, jobs, lower taxes. Frankly, Madam Speaker, it is a shame that members of this House of Commons are simply not focused on the priorities of Canadians. The GDP has increased 2.6% in the past quarter. The last jobs report showed 67,000 new jobs. Every month since the Prime Minister has held that office, wages have increased faster than inflation. Madam Speaker, we're going to stand up to build an economy that can stand on its own 2 feet, advance major projects, create jobs for people at at home, I wish they'd support it.
L'honorable député de Gaspésie, les Îles-de-la-Madeleine,
C'est pas le temps de célébrer l'entente pétrolière Canada-Alberta d'hier est une trahison climatique. On craignait l'annonce d'un nouveau pipeline dans l'Ouest. Les libéraux ont plutôt annoncé qu'il pourrait y en avoir plusieurs, en plus de l'expansion de Trans Mountain pour en extraire au bas mot 1,4 million de barils de pétrole de plus par jour. Les libéraux menacent aussi ouvertement la Colombie-Britannique de lui imposer leur fantasme pétrolier dans un des pires cas documentés de fédéralisme prédateur. C'est d'une rare violence, Madame la Présidente, tant en matière de climat qu'en matière de respect des provinces. Comment des élus qui se prétendent progressistes peuvent...
Le leader du gouvernement à la Chambre.
Madame la Présidente, voulez-vous parler de respect pour les champs de compétences et pour les provinces? Parlons des ambitions du Québec en matière de développement, des mines, des minéraux critiques, de l'énergie renouvelable, de l'énergie propre. Notre approche, Madame la Présidente, donne des résultats, 2,6% de croissance dans le dernier trimestre. Qu'est-ce que ça veut dire? Ça veut dire que dans le comté de mon estimé collègue, il peut avoir des mamans et des papas qui peuvent avoir des ambitions pour leurs enfants et des jobs, des bons jobs, des bonnes jobs à travers les régions du Québec, Madame la Présidente.
L'honorable député de Gaspésie, les Îles-de-la-Madeleine,
Madame la Présidente, la folie pétrolière annoncée hier par les libéraux, c'est une trahison climatique, une trahison envers les électeurs qui ont cru qu'un vote libéral était plus vert qu'un vote conservateur, une trahison envers les libéraux qui sont arrivés en politique avec des valeurs écologistes, une trahison envers les victimes des catastrophes naturelles de plus en plus fréquentes qui s'attendent à ce que leurs élus soient responsables. La question d'aujourd'hui n'est pas tant de savoir pourquoi le député de Laurier-Sainte-Marie a quitté le cabinet ministériel, mais plutôt comment les autres libéraux font pour rester dans ce gouvernement-là.
Madame la Présidente, nous sommes forts ici de ce côté de la Chambre. Pourquoi? Parce que nous sommes fidèles. Contrairement au Bloc québécois, nous sommes fidèles à nos engagements électoraux. C'était quoi? C'était de bâtir le Canada. C'était de respecter les champs de compétences. C'était de travailler avec les provinces pour atteindre leurs objectifs économiques. Et c'était, oui, Madame la Présidente, de donner la rassurance aux mamans et aux papas du Canada que leurs enfants peuvent trouver un avenir économique aussi fort et aussi brillant que le nôtre. C'est ce que nous faisons. Nous respectons nos engagements. J'invite le Bloc québécois à faire de même.
L'honorable député de Côte-Nord,
Madame la Présidente, les Québécois savent ce que c'est lorsque le Canada s'entend pour passer sur le corps d'une province. Aujourd'hui, c'est la Colombie-Britannique qui subit. Ça nuit des longs couteaux. Les libéraux de l'Alberta ont conclu une entente sans elle pour lui imposer un pipeline de force en invoquant l'intérêt national. Les Québécois doivent se méfier parce que le fédéral songe à nous imposer un pipeline à travers le fleuve Saint-Laurent depuis plus de 10 ans. Si c'est comme ça que les libéraux se comportent aujourd'hui, font-ils pareil avec le Québec?
L'honorable leader du gouvernement à la Chambre.
Madame la Présidente, ce matin, j'ai entendu les bonnes nouvelles économiques, 2,6% de croissance au Canada. Savez-vous ce que je n'ai pas entendu en Colombie-Britannique? Et on a besoin du Bloc québécois pour nous défendre. On va travailler avec la province de la Colombie-Britannique. On va travailler parce qu'on a un devoir de consulter et de respecter les Premières Nations en Colombie-Britannique. C'est ce que nous allons faire. Nous allons très bien pouvoir réussir tout ça, Madame la Présidente, sans l'aide du Bloc québécois qui veut scinder notre pays.
The Prime Minister's priorities are clear. He has gone from elbows up to putting his hands in the air and saying, who cares when it comes to negotiating for Canada. However, he's still working hard for the interests of Brookfield. Right. We learned in the recent budget that the Liberals are giving $500 million to the European Space Agency. Unreal. Guess who owns 50% of the UK campus where those funds are going? You guessed it right, Brookfield. Why does this Prime Minister continue to put his financial interests above the interests of Canadians?
Brookfield, sir.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, let me remind the member that we are doing very, very well. We woke up to tremendous news this morning, and he can rest assured that our government is entirely focused on building on our economy and on supporting industries and workers that require our help. We were elected to build Canada, and that's exactly what we're doing. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member for Northumberland Clark.
We continue to hear these old, tired lines from the so-called new government. They tell us again and again, Canadians have never had it so good. Here's the reality. Food bank usage is at record rates, over 2 million per month. Meanwhile, Brookfield stock has gone up by over 20% since the Prime Minister got elected. Maybe that's just a coincidence. Why do Canadians have to continue to suffer while Liberal elites get wealthier and wealthier?
Brookfield strong.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, let me remind the member who comes from the same province that I do that we're actually helping invest in Darlington New Nuclear Project in Bowmanville. It's a project that is going to build 4 new small nuclear reactors, the first of its kind in the G7. It's going to provide clean, reliable electricity to power 1.2 million homes. It's going to reduce our carbon emissions, and it's going to create 18,000 good-paying, quality jobs for the people of Ontario. Madam Speaker, why don't the members opposite get on board and support a plan that is actually growing our economy 2.6% this year?
Honourable member for York Vernon.
To get elected, the Prime Minister promised to negotiate a win. But now that the election is over, he says, who cares? Canadians were promised a Churchill, but what we got was Chamberlain. He appeased the U.S. President by dropping the digital services tax. He appeased the U.S. President by withdrawing our softwood lumber challenge. But appeasement didn't get us any trade peace. We thought we got nothing, but in fact, he just got nothing for Canadians. Brookfield got an $80 billion nuclear deal. Is that coincidence or cause and effect? Why does it appear that this Prime Minister continues to put his private interests ahead of those of Canadians?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, it is really challenging to take the Conservatives at their word when they're trying to purport to care about Canadians. I mean, they vote against everything, even with the word care in it. Right. Dental care, child care, pharma care, even health care infrastructure to build hospitals in my community in Durham region where that member is from. They won't even support that. You want to show that you care, step up to support major projects in this country that will create, like the new nuclear project at Darlington, creating 21,700 jobs in our region, and that member voted against it.
Shame on it. Honourable member for York Durham. Order!
Canadians and Conservatives care about the integrity of the highest office in the land, the Prime Minister. The conflict of interest rules are clear for members of the House. They are to arrange their private affairs in a manner to avoid real or apparent conflicts of interest. An $80 billion nuclear deal for Brookfield, $500 million to the European Space Agency to benefit Brookfield, undisclosed meetings with Brookfield executives. These raise serious issues of conflict of interest. Why does it appear that the Prime Minister continues to put his private interests ahead of those of Canadians?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
This member would rather question the loyalty of our Prime Minister, who is securing deals all around the world to drive investment into Canada, to protect jobs, who's stepping up with packages of support for tariff-impacted industries. This member won't even stand up to support a hospital in Durham region with the healthcare infrastructure funding that we put in the federal budget. He won't stand up to support a major project that will provide 1.2 million homes in our region with clean energy and 21,700 jobs. How can he say he cares about anybody but himself?
L'honorable député de Montmorency, Charlevoix.
C'est vendredi fou, mais il n'y a pas de rabais pour les Canadiens. On apprend cette semaine que les libéraux ont donné 528 millions de dollars à l'Agence spatiale européenne, soit 10 fois plus que l'ancienne entente sous l'ancien premier ministre. Mais devinez qui possède 50% du site de l'Agence spatiale? Brookfield. Une fois de plus, le premier ministre met ses intérêts personnels avant ceux des Canadiens, ou devrais-je dire, aux dépens de ceux des Canadiens, aux dépens des investissements ici au pays et aux dépens des emplois pour le Québec et le Canada. Pourquoi le premier ministre n'est pas capable de mettre les Canadiens avant ses intérêts personnels?
Merci, Madame la Présidente. C'est pas compliqué. Tout ce qu'on fait, c'est pour les Canadiens. Puis s'inquiéter de l'éthique, c'est essayer de dérouter certaines personnes du vrai travail qu'on fait. Au Québec, dans le budget, il y a un paquet de mesures qui sont pour notre économie, pour les travailleurs, des ponts, des routes, des travaux qui sont faits auprès d'Hydro-Québec pour qu'ils puissent stimuler leur production, des mines, des jobs. C'est ça, bâtir le Canadien. Arrêtons de se distraire, puis travaillons aux vraies affaires avec eux.
Madame la Présidente, écoutez, le diable est dans les détails. Hier, le gouvernement libéral a fait une série d'annonces en Alberta et le premier ministre a encore trouvé le moyen de s'avantager. Il a annoncé un plan de capture de carbone. Mais devinez quelle rare entreprise détient la technologie pour ce genre de méga-projet? Brookfield. Et si Brookfield fait de l'argent, le premier ministre fait de l'argent. Pourquoi à chaque annonce, on a comme l'impression que le gouvernement libéral va piger dans le catalogue de Brookfield pour ses méga-projets?
Bonjour, Madame la Présidente. Écoutez, je réponds à mon collègue que nous collaborons avec toutes les provinces, avec tous les secteurs. On a une mission, on a été élus, ce gouvernement-ci, pour bâtir une économie forte, une économie durable et un avenir pour nos enfants. La preuve que notre approche fonctionne, c'est qu'aujourd'hui, on entend que notre productivité augmente. C'est une très bonne nouvelle, Madame la Présidente. Nos politiques fonctionnent. Je demande à mes collègues de se joindre à nous puis voter en faveur de nos mesures. Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Every time this Prime Minister talks trade, it seems to be closing deals for his old firm Brookfield, while Canadian workers and taxpayers are left out in the sidelines. He went to Washington, and Brookfield walked away with an $80 billion nuclear deal. He went to London, and Brookfield got over $500 million for the European Space Agency. He hosted Swedish royalty, and Brookfield announced an AI deal with Sweden. Now he's forcing Alberta to pour billions of taxpayer dollars into carbon capture just to get a pipeline, exactly where Brookfield holds major stakes. So when this Prime Minister said he will build at a scale and speed not seen in generations, did he really mean just for Brookfield and not for Canadians?
The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, it appears that my honourable colleague has not really been cognizant of what the Prime Minister's been doing. $70 billion, Madam Speaker, and a financial commitment of investment from the UAE. We can also list the Philippines, Indonesia, Germany, Thailand, the Philippines, India. These are the trade deals that we're embarking upon, Madam Speaker. On the other side of the House, what are they focused on? Issues that Canadians are not going to benefit from. We are here for Canadians building Canada strong.
Honorable député de Beauharnois-Salaberry-Soulanges,
Madame la Présidente, grave dérive du nouveau ministre des Ressources naturelles. Hier, en commentant la démission de l'ancien ministre de l'Environnement, il a dit que ceux qui s'inquiètent du virage pétrolier des libéraux rêvent avec nostalgie au passé et cherchent des solutions magiques. Ça a l'air que maintenant, s'inquiéter pour l'environnement, c'est de la nostalgie puis de la pensée magique. Très inquiétant, sachant qu'il s'agit d'un proche du premier ministre depuis leurs jeunes années de banquier à Goldman Sachs. Est-ce que pour les libéraux, la lutte au changement climatique s'est rendue de la nostalgie?
Madame la Présidente, le ministre des Ressources naturelles faisait référence à la donne économique, commerciale qui vient de changer. Je pense que tous les Québécois, toutes les Québécoises comprennent que nous sommes dans une nouvelle ère en matière d'échange et en matière commerciale avec les États-Unis et peut-être avec le reste du monde. Donc, ce qui nous force à sécuriser notre économie, à travailler avec les provinces, à atteindre nos objectifs économiques, à travailler pour des grands projets. Au Québec, en énergie renouvelable, en minéraux critiques, Madame la Présidente, nous sommes élus pour bâtir, c'est ce qu'on a.
L'honorable député de Beauharnois-Salaberry-Soulanges.
Madame la Présidente, c'est effrayant qu'est-ce qu'on entend. Le même ministre a aussi traité ses collègues libéraux inquiets de boys scouts, de naïfs, révèle le Toronto Star. C'est rendu qu'au Canada, là, on peut être ministre des Ressources naturelles tout en pensant que s'inquiéter de la prolifération des pipelines de pétrole sale, c'est de la nostalgie, c'est de la pensée magique, c'est de la naïveté, puis c'est de se comporter en boy scout. Même le chef des conservateurs n'est pas climato-sceptique à ce point-là. Franchement, comment est-ce que les libéraux québécois peuvent être solidaires des dérives d'un ministre pareil?
Secrétaire d'État.
Madame la Présidente, aujourd'hui, on a une province qui avait de la difficulté à s'engager avec nous dans la lutte et dans l'atteinte à l'émission zéro carbone. Or, aujourd'hui, cette même province vient d'accepter une augmentation du prix du carbone, mais surtout vient d'accepter de réduire de 75% ses émissions de méthane. 75% ses émissions de méthane. Et puis, pour que le projet ait lieu, il faut qu'il y ait une entente avec la Colombie-Britannique, il faut qu'il y ait une entente avec les Premières Nations, il faut qu'il y ait de l'argent. Donc, c'est ça, faire avancer même la nature.
Honorable député de Beauce.
Les États-Unis imposent des tarifs dévastateurs de 45% sur le bois d'œuvre canadien. Ce week-end, le premier ministre s'est fait demander s'il avait parlé de commerce avec Donald Trump. Le premier ministre a répondu « Who cares? On s'en fout. » Pour vous dire que nous autres, dans la Beauce, on s'en fout pas. En Chaudière-Appalaches, il y a près de 8 000 emplois dans le secteur du bois d'œuvre. Pour vous dire qu'eux autres, tous s'en foutent pas. Madame la Présidente, est-ce que le premier ministre a le courage de se lever aujourd'hui devant les 8 000 travailleurs de notre région et de répéter « Je m'en fous ».
L'honorable secrétaire parlementaire.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Écoutez, dans les régions rurales, on a besoin de nos travailleurs forestiers, on a besoin de notre bois canadien. C'est une fierté au Canada. Dans ma circonscription, j'ai de fières entreprises forestières. Hier, on a annoncé cette semaine des mesures importantes pour soutenir le secteur. On sait que c'est pas facile, mais quand les temps sont difficiles, Madame la Présidente, nous soutenons. Et c'est exactement ce qu'on fait dans le secteur forestier. On va régler ces différends avec les États-Unis. En attendant, on serre les coudes.
Madame la Présidente, contrairement au premier ministre, nous, on ne s'en fout pas du bois d'œuvre. Aucun programme de prêt remplaceront les 780 millions de dollars de salaire annuel en Chaudière-Appalaches. Le premier ministre a promis un deal rapide avec les Américains. Constat, ça s'est empiré, les tarifs ont triplé. Madame la Présidente, les entreprises ne veulent pas des prêts. Les entreprises veulent une entente commerciale avec les Américains. Notre marché vital. Madame la Présidente, le premier ministre va-t-il lâcher les insultes, les who cares, je m'en fous, s'occuper des vrais enjeux et régler le deal du bois d'œuvre avec les Américains, oui ou non?
C'est pas un député conservateur qui va nous apprendre des leçons sur le secteur forestier. Madame la Présidente, nous sommes dans une guerre commerciale. Dans le cas du bois d'œuvre, c'est une guerre commerciale qui perdure depuis 40 ans. Les États-Unis sont jusqu'ici indélogeables sur le sujet. Donc, qu'est-ce qu'on fait? On répond en appuyant nos travailleurs. On répond en appuyant nos entreprises. On apprend en modernisant et en diversifiant nos offres. On apprend, Madame la Présidente, en forçant l'utilisation du bois d'œuvre canadien dans le grand chantier de construction de maisons au Canada, Madame la Présidente. C'est ça
In 2006, our Conservative government negotiated an end to the longest softwood lumber war. We negotiated a 10-year agreement with a 1-year grace period, which this government squandered. These Liberals have failed to do this in 10 years. 10 years! Thousands of jobs. Over 30 mills closed in the province of British Columbia. The Prime Minister ran an entire election on a false premise that he was a man with a plan, that he could get the job done. Now he says, who cares? As our lumber industry is crippled and communities are decimated.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, we are in a trade war. We are in a very difficult situation, and in that situation, this government is standing with those affected workers. We are moving heaven and earth to help them. We just announced another $500 million of supports 2 days ago. The member is fully aware of this, and we are open to more ideas for more supports. Now, we had a take-note debate the other night. I asked the Conservative members for their ideas. Do you want to know how many ideas I got from them? Zero. How about we get some ideas on the table? We are happy to support. We are happy to work with you to support. Let's get some ideas on the table.
The Honourable Member for Caribou Prince George.
You want a flipping idea of what to do? Get a flipping deal done. 10 years. 10 years. 10 years. Madam Speaker, another week, another mill closure in my riding. That's 100 direct and indirect jobs lost. That's hundreds of thousands of taxes for our municipalities. That's $1 million of taxes from our community of 100 Mile. Do you want to know who matters, Madam Speaker? It's the families that lost their jobs. That's who matters. Get their job done. Get agreement. Will the Prime Minister come to our region, tell them, look them in the eyes and tell them that they don't matter?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Madam Speaker, helpful ideas like just get a deal done are not going to get the deal done. We need ideas. We need support for workers, the workers you and I both care about. How about we work together to help this industry instead of these histrionics in the House? How about that?
The honourable member for Oshawa.
Clapping for
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister was asked whether he had spoken to Trump about trade, and guess what he did? He brushed off the question saying, who cares? He may not think it's a serious matter, but Conservatives do, and so do auto workers in Oshawa and across Ontario and Quebec who are seeing their jobs disappear. Thousands of auto jobs are leaving Canada, and workers justifiably feel their jobs don't matter because this Prime Minister said so. So if the Prime Minister won't fight for Canadian auto workers, then who is he fighting for? Brookfield?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, I would like to ask this member what she cares about. Does she care about health care, access to critical care and health care in our region? Because she voted against Budget 2025, including the Healthcare Infrastructure Fund, which will fund hospitals and healthcare facilities all across Canada, including in Durham region. Does she care about 21,700 jobs at the new nuclear project in Darlington? Because she voted against that as well, Madam Speaker. It's clear that she doesn't care about our region.
The honourable député de Terrebonne.
The honourable member for Terrebonne.
Madame la Présidente,
Madam
le temps
Speaker,
est depuis longtemps
NATO
une pierre
has
angulaire de l'ordre
long been a
international
cornerstone of
fondée sur des
international
règles
rules-based
qui a
order
assuré la
that
paix
has
et
delivered
la
peace
stabilité
and
depuis la Deuxième
stability
Guerre
since the
mondiale.
Second
La
World
semaine
War.
prochaine, nos alliés et
Next
nos
week,
partenaires
our
se
allies and
réuniront à
partners will meet in
Bruxelles pour
Brussels
examiner les
to
conflits et les
address the
défis
conflicts
auxquels
and challenges
notre
facing
alliance
our
est confrontée.
alliance.
La ministre des Affaires
And the Minister
étrangères
of Foreign
peut-elle informer la
Affairs
Chambre
informed
de
this
la
House how
façon
she
dont elle
plans to
compte
represent
représenter le
Canada
Canada
and
et
work with our
travailler avec
allies
nos alliés pour faire
to
progresser
advance
nos
our
intérêts
interests ahead
en
of this
prévision
important
de cette
meeting?
importante rencontre.
Bonne question.
Le ministre des
The
Affaires
Honourable Minister
étrangères.
of Foreign Affairs.
Madame
Madam Speaker,
je remercie
I'd like to thank
mon
my
honorable
honourable
collègue pour
colleague
sa
for this
question.
question.
La semaine prochaine, je vais
And next
être
week,
à
I
l'automne
will
pour discuter
be
les enjeux
at
très
NATO
importants
to
avec
discuss
nos
very important
alliés.
issues with
Par
our
exemple,
allies, for
l'Ukraine, par exemple,
Ukraine,
l'Arctique et aussi,
the
par exemple,
Arctic,
notre
and
défense collective.
our collective
Avec
defense.
un investissement de
With an
80
investment
milliards de
of
dollars dans le
$80
budget
billion in the
2025,
2025
nous
budget,
sommes ici pour les
we are
forces armées
here
canadiennes,
for the
notre
Canadian Armed
secteur de
Forces
défense.
and our
Le
defense
Canada va
sector.
toujours
Canada
jouer sa
will
part
always do its part
pour la défense collective
for
et
the
pour
collective
la
defense
protection de notre
of our
pays.
country and the
The
protection of
honourable
our
member
country.
for Parkland.
Madam Speaker, yesterday the Prime Minister promised Canadians a pipeline. Maybe, someday. He's not sure. Meanwhile, the Environment Minister can't even say the word pipeline, and another minister just jumped ship. This isn't a grand bargain, it's a grand ransom. The only thing certain is that Canadians' industrial carbon taxes are going up. Canadians have sacrificed a lot, and all we've received so far are vague Liberal promises. Will the Prime Minister tell us what year we will see shovels in the ground on a new oil pipeline to the West Coast?
The honourable leader of the government in the House.
Madam Speaker, we had yesterday a very comprehensive display of meeting the ambitions and meeting the moment in Western Canada, in Alberta, making sure that we have a better path to fighting climate change, a higher price on industrial carbon. Premier Smith has signed on to a radical set of new measures to make sure we have clean electricity, to make sure we build data centers, to make sure we build nuclear energy. And you know who's going to do all that? Canada's building trades people, the men and women of Canada's building trades. We're going to be building Alberta strong, building Canada strong.
The honourable member for Parkland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Notice he didn't say pipeline. As part of the Great Ransom, taxpayers will be required to invest billions to pump air into the ground. Meanwhile, by pure coincidence, I'm sure, the Prime Minister's company, Brookfield, is the largest investor in carbon capture company Entropy. The Prime Minister is using taxpayers' funds to underwrite his company's investments. Brookfield's $300 million investment in Entropy is already backed by $200 million in taxpayers' funds. That's not Canada strong, that's Brookfield strong. How much does this Prime Minister stand to gain by forcing Canadians to fund his carbon capture projects?
The honourable parliamentary secretary.
Madam Speaker, tinfoil is actually made of aluminum, so I'd like to thank the member for her first act supporting that sector in this House. The facts of the matter are this. Yesterday we announced an MOU with Alberta that increases economic prosperity for this country, that increases environmental sustainability and the durability of environmental action in this country, and it makes us less reliant on the United States. That's a good day for Alberta. That's a good day for Canada. I welcome the member's office to get on board.
The member for Abbotsford South Langley.
Madam Speaker, this week we saw reports that the BC Liberal caucus is seething, anxious, and angry of the Prime Minister's pipe dream to the Pacific Coast. To keep them quiet, he even gave the BC Premier a veto on the project and will increase the industrial carbon tax that will only make everything worse. When the Prime Minister said he would build at a scale and speed not seen in generations, did he mean taxes, not projects?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, yesterday was a great day for Canada because it got us onto a better course of action and more common ground and confederation between Alberta and Canada, which will also lead to a better course of action across the entire country. Part of the agreement was that we would work with British Columbia, we would work in a tripartite table, and of course we all respect the Indigenous rights of peoples. This is great for Canada, this expands our markets, this expands our economy, and this makes environmental action more durable.
The Honourable Member for Abbotsford South Langley.
Madam Speaker, families need stronger paychecks and affordable energy, but instead building pipelines to the Pacific, the Prime Minister gives us more paper, more delays, and more vetoes. The MOU guarantees nothing except 7 months of waiting and 2 years of federal studies. When will the Prime Minister finally get out of the way, give Canadians a firm construction date for the West Coast pipeline, or will this be another Liberal broken promise?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you very much, Speaker. This Prime Minister is focused on making sure that we're creating good-paying jobs for all Canadians. We are investing and building things like this they've never been done before. We're making sure that we diversify our trade, so we're investing in our ports right in British Columbia so that we can export more to other markets like the Indo-Pacific. That is the focus of this government. That is the focus of this Prime Minister. We will not rest until we create good-paying jobs for all Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Samuka and South Okanagan, West Kootenay.
Ms. Speaker, Liberal MPs in BC are telling the media they are, quote, seething, anxious, and angry about a pipeline that would end Canada's economic dependence on the United States. The Liberal caucus is falling apart over this. The Prime Minister must not give his Keep It in the Ground caucus or Premier Evie a veto. Only he has the constitutional and legislative power to approve a pipeline today. Will he ignore the naysayers and approve it today, or will he offer more delay?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, we're committed on this side of the House to cooperative federalism with the province of Alberta, but we remain committed and we remain respectful of Aboriginal and treaty rights, as well as the free, prior, informed consent of communities entrenched in UNDRIP. And so we're going to continue to respect these rights. It's not only the right thing to do, but it's also the law.
The Honourable Member for Samuka and South Okanagan, West Kootenay.
Madam Speaker, let's be clear what was signed yesterday. A memorandum that will hike the industrial carbon tax, and in exchange, the Liberals will allow a pipeline proposal to be further studied for the next 2 years. There are no timelines for approval, and many Liberals are demanding that the timelines be never. This Liberal caucus is divided. Will the Prime Minister ignore them, forget the tax hikes, and just approve a pipeline today? Or is this pipeline a pipe dream?
Yeah. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, the Minister of Immigration.
Madam Speaker, the slogans continue on the other side. What is lacking is seriousness. They condemn a decision signed by the Premier of Alberta. Yesterday was a great day for Alberta and for Canada. This government was elected on a policy vision to ensure more jobs in this country, economic stewardship, and environmental stewardship at the same time. We will maintain that vision from start to finish. I invite the member to join us.
The Honourable Member for Vernon Lake Country, Monashee.
Madam Speaker, we hear that the BC Liberal caucus is, quote, seething, anxious, and angry about a possible pipeline, so the Prime Minister is appeasing them by hiding behind the provincial NDP like Brookfield hides behind Caribbean tax laws. After 9 years of Liberal energy mismanagement, Canadians want a pipeline. Will the Prime Minister do his job, stop the political games, and immediately get shovels in the ground on this oil pipeline?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, the far-reaching Memorandum of Understanding with Alberta includes a number of timelines. I invite the members to read it. By July 1st of next year is when a pipeline proposal will come from the province of Alberta. There are timelines, and we are seeing that not just talk about pipelines, but talks about AI data centers, nuclear energy, many ways we can grow the Canadian economy in a clean way, in a big way, in a way that doesn't rely as much on the United States of America. This is a good day for Alberta. This is a good day for Canada. I invite the members opposite to get on board.
The Honourable Member for Cloverdale-Langley City.
Madam Speaker, the Liberal government isn't just divided, it's cracking. BC Liberal MPs are publicly venting, unnamed ministers are warning of serious problems, and now their Quebec lieutenant has walked out of cabinet entirely. But while the Prime Minister struggles to hold his team together, Canadians are left paying the price. We sell almost all our oil to one customer, the U.S., because we have no pipeline to the Pacific. When will the Prime Minister stop putting political damage control ahead of the national interest and give us a date when the pipeline will be built?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Madam Speaker, the Liberal caucus is only cracking open wide enough to welcome Conservatives to come join us. My honourable colleague would like a date for a pipeline to the West Coast. How about May of last year when the Trans Mountain expansion got new Canadian products to markets, which is driving up the price of Canadian resources? The Conservatives have failed to get anything built when they were last in government because they ignored the role of provinces, because they ignored the rights of Indigenous peoples in this country. By working together with different levels of government and Indigenous rights holders, we are able to advance major projects. This is not some idea. This is our...
The Honourable Member for Cloverdale-Langley City.
Madam Speaker, a pipeline to the West Coast isn't just another project. It's a nation-building decision that falls squarely under the federal government's authority. Canadians expect the Prime Minister to act, but instead, he's giving the NDP Premier of BC a veto in an effort to manage the uproar in his caucus, a caucus that's now losing senior ministers over the issue. Madam Speaker, when will the Prime Minister stop passing the buck and use the federal authority that rests with him alone to ensure this pipeline gets built?
The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, she's talking about the constitutional authority of the Prime Minister. If she actually read the entirety of the section that she's referring to, she would notice that it also gives the constitutional authority to provincial governments to build or not build the infrastructure, the roads, the electricity, the water services that it would make possible to have a pipeline actually operate in the first place. In addition, Madam Speaker, Section 35 of that very same Constitution demands that governments respect the inherent and treaty rights of Indigenous peoples in this country, including by consulting them on advancing major projects. By working together, we can get big things done. That's a path.
The Honourable Member for Dartmouth-Cole Harbour.
Madam Speaker, Atlantic Canada is a culture of innovation, and my riding of Dartmouth-Cole Harbour is home to leading ocean technology and maritime defence researchers and innovators, many of them located strategically along the shores of beautiful Dartmouth Cove. These companies and partners are driving major advances in ocean tech and strengthening Canada's national defence and security. Can the Minister highlight the work the government is doing to support these important security and defence initiatives in Dartmouth-Cole Harbour?
The Honourable Minister of Defence.
Madam Speaker, I thank this member for his work and for his advocacy for Atlantic Canadian excellence. This past weekend, we announced Canada's first Maritime Defence Innovation Secure Hub, or DISH, at Cove in Dartmouth-Cole Harbour. This is a brand new $30 million hub will bring together for the first time defence and security partners, industry, academia, naval operators to develop, to test, and transition new maritime technologies. Madam Speaker, from coast to coast to coast, we are investing millions in building up a resilient innovation industry right here at home.
Honourable Member for Calgary-Nose Hill.
Madam Speaker, millions of Canadians don't have a family doctor, and Canada's emergency rooms are overflowing. But non-citizens who've had their asylum claims rejected are eligible for all sorts of federal health benefits that Canadians aren't, like mental health support and vision care. It's unfair to offer people with no legal reason to be in Canada better federal health benefits than Canadians have access to. Why are the Liberals giving bogus asylum claimants who have no legal reason to be in Canada access to better health services than Canadians rather than simply deporting them?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Immigration.
Madam Speaker, the member knows very well that those who are not eligible to be here will face the consequences of Canadian law, Mr. Speaker. We trust authorities to carry that out. As for services in this country, we understand that there's been a strain on services and that the immigration system has a part to play in that. What's also at stake, Madam Speaker, is that we put policy on the table to address those issues. A sustainable, responsible immigration system is exactly what we're pursuing to address those service challenges.
People with no legal right to be in Canada should not have access to federal health benefits. Right. The Liberals have given a Dutch Somali national who gave multiple false names and birth dates to immigration officers, have also lied about being in a polygamous marriage, yet another chance to stay in Canada. Lying to immigration officers should immediately invalidate somebody's ability to stay in Canada. The decision to let someone enter or stay in Canada should be made on truthful information. This is a no-brainer. Why are the Liberals rewarding non-citizen liars with the right to stay in Canada?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, I say this with all due respect. This is the immigration critic for the Conservative Party for almost 10 years. She knows very well that when new information comes in, it can lead to the cancellation of existing visas that allow individuals to be here in the first place. And so when we understand these matters, we leave it in the hands of authorities to address those matters. On this side of the House, we are continuing to be seized with the importance of ensuring a sustainable, responsible immigration system that's focused on the economy from the beginning to end, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Calgary-Nose Hill.
Well, in that case, the government found out that this person was a polygamist, lied about it, and still let them stay here. So, Mr. Speaker, we also this week heard the Liberals argue against my bill, which would remove the ability of activist judges and lawyers to give leniency to non-citizens convicted of serious crimes like sexual assault. And for a non-citizen, being able to stay in Canada should be considered a privilege, not a right. Non-citizens convicted of sexual assault or those who were caught lying about polygamy shouldn't be rewarded with this ability to stay in Canada. They should be removed. It's a no-brainer.
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
The member is or should be aware of the landmark Supreme Court decision of 2013 that says that the courts and judges in particular can take note of the immigration status of an individual, but cannot use that to condition sentencing in a way that would avoid immigration consequences, Madam Speaker. This is not a serious question, Madam Speaker. The point is that if we're going to do immigration policy seriously in this country, we have to make sure that we allow security.
The Honourable Member for Markham-Stouffville.
Madam Speaker, Canada has what the world needs and wants. The best educated workforce in the world, free trade agreements with every G7 country, an abundance of natural resources, world-class innovators, entrepreneurs and exporters. And thanks to Budget 2025, Canada will have the lowest marginal effective tax rate in the G7. Unlike the members opposite, I'm proud to have voted in favour of a budget that will boost productivity and attract investments. Can the Parliamentary Secretary remind this House exactly what those who...
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance.
Speaker, that the Conservatives will talk down our industries and workers every chance they get. That may help generate clicks and fundraising emails, but it won't build Canada strong. So while they're in the business of saying no, we're in the business of saying yes. Yes to productivity tax deductions for businesses. Yes to making it easier for Canadian companies to invest in machinery, equipment, and technology to help them grow and thrive. Yes to catalyzing investments to supercharge productivity in Canada. When we say yes to Canada and to Canadians, Conservatives say no. Maybe that's why Canadians keep saying no every time the Conservatives...
The Honourable Member for Vaughan Woodbridge.
So every time the Prime Minister talks trade, it seems Brookfield comes out ahead and Canadians get left behind. Travels to Washington, Brookfield got an $80 billion nuclear deal. Traveled to the UK, Brookfield got money from the EU Space Agency. He hosts Swedish royalty in Canada. Brookfield announces an AI deal even before they land back in Stockholm. Now he's forcing Alberta to put money into carbon capture programs in exchange for a pipeline. And guess who has a major stake in the sector? Brookfield. Madam Speaker, when he said he would build at scale not seen in generations, did he really mean just for Brookfield?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House.
Madam Speaker, on this side of the House, count us a little perplexed as to the approach of the Conservatives in question period today. First, we have the news of 2.6% growth in our economy, which leads all published data in the G7. We signed a landmark agreement with the province of Alberta yesterday that will secure an economic future for families, for children, for people looking for jobs, and an economic future across the prairies and into British Columbia. Madam Speaker, it is shameful that this Conservative Party sets up their tinfoil hats.
Honourable Member for Nunavut.
This summer, a cargo ship went aground in the Franklin Strait, a rare occurrence. With climate change, the Northwest Passage has become more accessible. Nunavut relies heavily on ship diesel, and the risk of damaging the pristine waters is increasing. Mapping the seafloor will ensure more predictable navigation. Will the minister commit to funding Arctic bathymetry as a multi-use project to keep Canada's sovereignty over the Arctic?
The Honourable Government House Leader. Now, the Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Madam Speaker, with our Arctic foreign policy, we are continually ensuring that the sovereignty and the livelihood of the Arctic is protected. That is why we are putting on the table $80 billion for defense spending. In conjunction with Indigenous peoples, we are going to make sure that we protect the Arctic and we defend the Arctic, and we will do so with our international allies. I'll be traveling to NATO next week to have those.
The Honourable Member for Vancouver East.
Behind closed doors, without BC and First Nations at the table, the Prime Minister agreed to lift the tanker ban, put at risk the way of life of coastal communities, bring in a new fossil fuel subsidy at the expense of renewable energy and clean technologies, and move Canada further away from its greenhouse gas reductions targets. The Prime Minister says they will not proceed without the consent of BC and free, prior, informed consent of First Nations. But nowhere is this spelled out in the MOU. Why?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Indigenous treaty rights do not need to be spelled out in MOUs. They are inherent. But I do want to talk a little bit about the MOU and what the MOU allows. The MOU allows us to have a durable climate plan, one that moves the effective price of carbon in Alberta from $25 to $130. It allows us to reduce methane emissions by 75%. It allows us to take carbon out of the air through carbon capture, and it does that in a way that says that there are going to be ongoing reviews to make sure those commitments towards net zero in 2050 are maintained. This is great news for the climate, and I encourage everybody in this House.
This is the end of oral questions. Affaires courantes. Affaires courantes. Dépôt de documents. Dépôt de projets de loi émanant des députés.
Tabling documents, tabling of government bills.
Statements by ministers. Reports from interparliamentary delegations. Presenting reports from committees. L'honorable député de Québec.
The honourable member for Quebec.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
J'ai l'honneur de présenter dans les deux langues officielles le deuxième rapport du comité permanent de la sécurité publique et nationale concernant le projet de loi C-12, loi concernant certaines mesures liées à la sécurité de la frontière canadienne et à l'intégrité du système d'immigration canadien
and the integrity of the Canadian immigration system and respecting other related security measures. The committee has studied the bill and has decided to report it back to the House with amendments. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Presenting reports from committees, the Honourable Member for Barrie South Innisfield.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have the honour to present in both official languages the fourth report of the Standing Committee on Access to Information, Privacy and Ethics, entitled Proposed Review of the Conflict of Interest Act. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I believe the Honourable Member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes is rising on the same report.
Yes, Conservatives support the main report from the Standing Committee on Access to Information, Privacy and Ethics, but want to highlight two concerns in our dissenting report. First, that Mr. Flatt and Mr. Teske refused to appear. They stayed outside of Canada to avoid testifying, even though the House could still order them to appear when they return. And second, we have deep concerns about the Prime Minister's conflicts of interest. Massive Brookfield holdings with future bonus pay, possibly in the tens of millions of dollars, and they aren't properly managed under current rules. Administrators of the screen weren't even aware that the Prime Minister had met with the COO of Brookfield and that 95% of Brookfield companies aren't covered by the screen. The committee should continue examining fixes into the Act to restore public trust, and that's what we're going to look to do. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Dépôt de projet de loi émanant des
Introduction of private members' bills.
Première lecture du
First
projet de
reading
loi d'intérêt
of
public émanant
Senate
du Sénat.
public bills.
Motions. Presenting petitions. The Honourable Member for Cape Breton Council? Oh, no. Okay. The Honourable Member for Courtney Alberni.
Madam Speaker, Prime Minister, on behalf of petitioners from my riding of Courtney Alberni, honoured to table this petition today. They cite that Prime Minister Carney made the elbows up promise to defend Canadian sovereignty and democracy and distinguish Canada from the dangerous politics of the United States. Bill C-2, they highlight, appears as a Trojan horse for sweeping surveillance policies, expanding police access to personal data without warrant.
The Honourable Member knows he cannot use the name of a current member in the House. He's been here long enough. Thank you.
My apologies, Madam Speaker. If I could, Madam Speaker, in honor to table this petition on behalf of petitioners from my riding at Courtney Alberni, they highlight that the Prime Minister made the elbows up promise to defend Canadian sovereignty and democracy and distinguish Canada from the dangerous politics of the United States. They highlight that Bill C-2 appears as a Trojan horse for sweeping surveillance policies, expanding police access to personal data without warrants, lowering privacy thresholds to reasonable grounds, weakening protections on international data sharing, and allowing Canada Post to open private mail. This legislation is is offensive and is undemocratic. They also highlight that Bill C-2 tramples on our Charter of Rights and Freedoms and puts Canada on a dangerous path of xenophobia and racism. They also call on the Government of Canada to immediately withdraw Bill C-2 in full, uphold the elbows up promises to reject Trump-style policies ensuring immigration, security, and private legislation reflect our nation's commitment to democracy and human rights, and honor the responsibility of elected office and affirm our Charter, not trample it. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Regina West Canada.
Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to have the opportunity to present a petition here today on behalf of concerned residents of Regina and southern Saskatchewan. Signers of the petition are concerned about the Liberal government's plan to ban the sale of internal combustion engine vehicles by the year 2035. They say that the plan is unrealistic due to the lack of capacity in this country's electricity grid, and the end result will be to drive up the price of both new and used vehicles. Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to have the opportunity to present this petition here today in the House of Commons.
For Edmonton Manning.
Thanks, Madam Speaker. I'm presenting this petition on behalf, with 600 signatures on behalf of the Falun Gong practitioners in China, that they suffered from severe human rights abuses, including mass arbitrary detention, torture, killing, and forced organ harvesting on a larger scale. The signer or the undersigned, they're calling on the Canadian government to publicly call on the Chinese regime to end its persecution, Falun Gong in China, and transitional repression abroad, and continue to impose sanctions and pursue accountability for CCP officials and Brookside responsible for the human rights violations. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Bruce Grey Owen Sound.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm presenting a petition very similar to my honourable colleague from Edmonton Manning. It's Canadians that are calling upon the Government of Canada to proactively deploy all possible avenues to publicly call out the Chinese regime to end its persecution of Falun Gong in China and transnational repression abroad, to continue to impose sanctions on and pursue accountability for the Chinese Communist Party officials and proxies responsible for these human rights violations, and finally to take stronger measures to protect the Falun Gong community targeted by this foreign repression. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Presenting petitions. I believe the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary is rising on a point of order.
Just to indicate that, not on a point of order, Madam Speaker, a question.
Is on the order of paper? No.
Stand.
Okay.
So that agreed?
Yes. Is it agreed? Agreed. Now the Honourable Deputy House Leader is writing on the point of order.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Earlier today, I'm rising on a point of order. And earlier today, the second report of the Standing Committee on Public Safety and National Security was tabled in this House, respecting the consideration of Bill C-12, an act respecting certain measures relating to the security of Canada's borders and integrity of the Canadian immigration system, and respecting other related security measures. I'm rising on the point of order to bring to the Speaker's attention 9 amendments that were adopted in the committee that the chair of that committee ruled were inadmissible on the grounds that these amendments violated the Parent Act rule. Page 771 of the third edition of the House of Commons Procedure and Practice states in relation to the rules and precedents that govern the admissibility of amendments proposed in committee that, and I quote, as an amendment to a bill must be relevant in that it must always relate to the subject matter of the bill or to clause thereof under consideration in the case of a bill referred to a committee after second reading. An amendment is inadmissible if it proposes to amend a statute that is not before the committee or a section of the Parent Act unless the latter is specifically amended by a clause of the bill, end of quote. In that case of the study by the Standing Committee on Public Safety and National Security on Bill C-12, the following 9 amendments were ruled to be inadmissible by the chair and that it infringed on the Parent Act rule. In these 9 circumstances, a majority of members on that committee voted to overturn the chair's ruling, and these amendments were subsequently adopted. So these amendments include CPC 8, CPC 13, CPC 14, CPC 15, CPC 16, and CPC 17, to Part 6 of the bill concerning asylum reform, CPC 30 and CPC 33, which create 2 new parts of the bill concerning penalties for human trafficking and the location of the position of the chair of the Immigration and Refugee Board, and CPC 2 to Part 4 of the bill respecting ministerial powers, duties, and functions related to the Canadian Coast Guard. I therefore submit that these 9 aforementioned amendments were inadmissible at committee, and should you agree, I would humbly request that the bill be reprinted without offending amendments for the House to consider at the report stage. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I thank the honourable member for bringing that to the chair's attention, and it will be taken under advisement. Honorable député de
The honourable member for Mégantic-Lérable
Madame la Présidente, je viens de prendre connaissance des propos de
I have just heard the remarks
leader parlementaire adjointe, bien que je constate que ce qu'elle dit, c'est que elle rejette des amendements qui ont été adoptés par la majorité des membres du comité. Je voudrais réserver nos commentaires pour plus tard.
I would like to reserve some comments for later, but we will have something to say about those statements. I would like to thank the member for his clarification. As I noted, the issue will be taken under advisement.
Je désirais informer la Chambre que le volume des oreillettes sera maintenant
reset. Orders of the day.
Ordre du jour, ordre émanant du gouvernement, projet de loi émanant du gouvernement commune, reprise du débat en deuxième lecture du projet de loi C10, loi sur le commissaire à la mise en œuvre des traités modernes.
The honourable member for Vaughan Woodbridge.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's an honor to rise again in this chamber on behalf of the people of Vaughan Woodbridge. So today we're debating Bill C-10, the Commissioner for Modern Treaty Implementation Act. This bill would create a new officer of Parliament supported by a new federal office with a mandate to review and audit how federal departments implement modern treaties. The Commissioner would examine the performance of government institutions and present findings in Parliament. The stated goal is to improve how Canada lives up to its obligations under modern treaties. The bill is presented as a measure in the Federal Action Plan to implement UNDRIP and responds to a long-standing frustration that that Canada often signs agreements and then fails to deliver on them. Those frustrations are very real, Madam Speaker. Conservatives recognize that. We support treaty rights and reconciliation. We support self-determination and self-government for First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. We do not question the sincerity of Indigenous partners who see this bill as a way to hold Ottawa accountable. Our concern is that Bill C-10 answers a problem of implementation with more bureaucracy and less accountability. We need accountability inside the government to actually meet our treaty obligations. To understand why that matters, it's worth recalling where modern treaties come from and what they are meant to fix. Treaty rights in Canada go back to the earliest relationships between the Crown and Indigenous nations. Through royal proclamations in 1763, the historic peace and friendship treaties are the numbered treaties that cover much of Western and Northern Canada. Those treaties, however imperfectly honored, are recognized and affirmed in Section 35 of the Constitution Act 1982. In many parts of the country, Indigenous title and rights were never resolved by historic treaties. That is why the Supreme Court's decision in 1973 was so important. The court recognized Indigenous title in Canadian law and forced the federal government to move from denial to negotiation. That decision opened the modern treaty era and led to the first modern treaty in James Bay and northern Quebec in the Agreement of 1975. Since 1975, Canada has negotiated and signed 26 modern treaties with Indigenous groups in Canada, 18 of which contain self-government provisions or associated self-government agreements. Canada